Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Jacob.
Today's episode isn't related to any new release, but instead we're taking a nostalgia trip back to a series of films from our childhood that may likely also be relevant to our listeners when they were kids, and maybe the parents and grandparents as well of those kids. What are we talking about today, Jake?
Today we're going to discuss one of my old favourites as a childhood, Bionicle.
Haha, yes. So Bionicle is an action figure toy line made by LEGO using their Technic system, running for 10 years from the year 2000, with a year-long revival in 2015. The Bionicle were constructible, customizable, and most importantly, collectible, featuring an original story of robotic elemental warriors in a sci-fi fantasy setting, battling the forces of darkness. The first movie, The Mask of Light, was released in 2003, and tying into the then current wave of figures, with two more films, prequels, released the next 2 years. A fourth film was released a few years afterwards, towards the line's end. That's available to rent on YouTube. The first three we're going to focus on are free to watch on YouTube, through pure luck. And we're going to focus on those because those were our childhood, as opposed to the other ones.
Also, a big thank you to the Bionicles Animation Archive on YouTube for keeping all these movies in 1080p and 60 FPS.
Oh, yes, totally. It was really interesting going back to these movies.
I will say, for as much as I love them, they're not exactly what you would consider high art. They're very simple, predictable storylines, but they're still the kind of thing where it's just massively enjoyable. You should sit down, you watch it, you enjoy it. You don't have to go in expecting anything over the top or too thinky. It's just good versus evil, nice and simple.
I mean, these are movies to sell toys,
Precisely.
basically, but they look nothing like the toys.
Well, at the start they don't, because then they'll release the toys after the movies come out to look more like them. But of course, the toys' mouths don't move. Their mouths in the movies do, which makes things... Well, it's very bizarre to watch their mouths move because they're meant to be robots.
Yeah, because they are like basically robots. We've actually got a few of us here in the studio, some from my old collection, which I dug out and built together. And yeah, they are basically robotic, but within the films themselves, they try to make them somewhat more human. He's twiddling his arm there.
Well, okay, that's always the thing with these. Anthropomorphizing the characters helps you feel more connection to them. As well as, for the most part, stellar voice work in the movies.
Yes.
As with, you get your occasional not too great performances, but for the most part, it's seasoned veterans in the field doing their best to make these characters come to life, and for the most part, succeed.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before we started recording. There's a lot to say about these films, and yeah, the voice work is interesting. So the first film, like I said, was tied into the then current toy line. It's kind of a bit Hobbitish. I mean, Lord of the Rings, like that first one. It's like, you know, two villagers go on a big quest and there's heroes they meet along the way, and
it's very much the hero's journey kind of style movie. Very, very typical, very tropey, but still enjoyable. The voice work can be a bit hit and miss with that one. There are some great voice work, such as the primary three tower you first meet, which is the fire tower, water tower, and stone tower.
Yeah.
But then you meet the air tower, and the voice work there is decidedly
different.
Not as good.
Yeah, the Toa are the great elemental warriors we mentioned, and the Matoran villagers. There's a lot of backstory and lore to this, which we'll...
And there's a lot of different names and titles, which we can't promise to remember them because there is a lot to digest.
Yeah, there is so much. It was weird going back and just having it all come back, watching it though, but still trying to watch it like this is fresh eyes, and like, you know, what if I never seen this before, and what if I knew nothing about it? How does it come across?
Precisely. Like I said before, it's no masterpiece. It is not this incredible, life-changing experience. But it is just basically very enjoyable. It is easily digestible. The movies are both an hour and 15 minutes long, or all an hour and 15 minutes long. You can sit down and watch them all in a session if you're patient enough, which I did yesterday.
Yeah,
and you just enjoy it. You're like, yeah, you want the good guys to win, you want the bad guys to lose, and it's just nice and simple.
Yeah, it was interesting. One thing I remember when I did see this was knowing the figures, and you sort of imbue them with your own personality. I mean, there were tie-in books, there were tie-in comic books, but then for there to be a film where you see them sort of so, or more clearly defined, it's a bit strange.
Strange, but I do find enjoyable. It's nice to have a canon personality to put to your toys.
Yeah.
It made playing with them in the playground a lot easier.
Yes.
There are also quite a few tie-in video games which were either okay or atrocious.
Yes. There's actually a new one coming out. It's a fan-made production, and it's like based off the toy look. and it's ridiculously high definition. This like massive role playing online. I don't know, MO, whatever. But yeah, there's still a passionate fan base to this day.
The Bionicle fan base is still alive and strong, I've found. If anything, it's had a resurgence in the previous years. Just because some notable people on your social media platforms have suddenly remembered they existed. And they mentioned that, and suddenly everybody else is like, oh, wow, I loved those too when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes for something to just come back into the public eye.
Yeah. It was really the first big thing from Lego as well, to have an original story. I mean, before that you had your Lego City themes with like your policemen, your firemen, your pirates, your space adventures, but there was never really a narrative.
There was always themes, not a story.
Yeah. And I mean, with the Bionicle, it's sort of a precursor to the now long-running Ninjago.
Exactly.
And Chima and all that stuff.
Bionicle was always meant to be like the young adults fiction of the Lego world.
Yeah.
It was always for the slightly edgier, cooler young adults, you know, you're between 10 and 12 when you're starting to rebel against the parents and want cooler stuff.
It's crazy. I read as well that the intention with Bionicle was that it was going to run for 20 years, which means to this day.
If only.
Yeah, because it ended in 2010. And
it did, practically.
Yeah, so, I mean, with Lego, as a general, it's kind of said with adult fans of Lego, which I am. Everyone kind of goes through like a dark period, like the Dark Ages, where they just don't collect Lego, they put it away, they give it away, and then if they do come back to it, they realise, oh no, I need to rebuy everything.
And oh no, everything's 10 times more expensive than it was.
But better made.
Much better made. Yes. Oh, the quality is incredible these days.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest issues, though, is Lego has so many licenses, they don't need the Bionicle anymore.
Yeah.
They just ignore it because, well, we've got licensing from pretty much everything. But not Star Trek, I discovered, which I was very disappointed at.
Yeah, they're a bit... I mean, they're all Disney now. They're in bed with Disney, who I guess, you know, own Star Wars now. And they've been doing Star Wars for well over 20 years now.
Precisely. And their Star Wars Lego is fantastic.
Yes. I'm a big collector of that.
Once it got popular and started licensing other products, they realised they could ramp up the price that people would pay for it.
But yeah, I was going to say, what was like the falling off the point for you with Bionicle?
I think it was just when I entered high school, and it wasn't even the fact I didn't like it anymore. I just found new interests. It was the kind of thing where you're in high school, you want to try new things, find new interests. I was getting into more different things. That was probably when I started getting into anime, which is Japanese animation, which I got really into in high school. And a lot of the other stuff I was into just kind of fell by the wayside. It wasn't until near the end of high school when I started to get back into the stuff I liked as a kid again, which is when I started into college, and I started thinking, wow, Bionicle was a thing, wasn't it?
It was.
And then just got really passionate again about it.
Yeah. I think I stuck with it until about 2007. And then once 2008 came around and it was like, you know, giant bat people in like a sort of air environment, I was just like, nah, this is too much for me.
Yeah.
Especially after dedicating completely to like the water theme that they had, the underwater theme the year before. And it was
I was definitely more into the movie tie-in Bionicle myself because I was really into the movies.
Which we need to talk about.
We do.
The voice acting, yeah, there's that guy in the first one, Takua.
Yes, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember his name. I know he's done a few things, but you could tell a few of the voice actors were phoning it in that movie.
A little, yeah. That first one, yeah, it's the first one, it's them trying to find their feet.
They were trying to find their feet, and no one knew it was going to be any good. Everyone thought it was just going to be a dodgy tie-in. It's like when Transformers first started getting cartoons. It was just meant to sell toys.
Yeah.
No one was trying too hard.
Yeah.
Except Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime was always the man.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But then as they got on and got a bit more popular, the voice worked and realised, oh, hang on, this is decent. People like this. We should put some effort in. And they did.
They did, yeah. The second film is like leagues ahead. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's still better and it's quite good on its own.
Yes. It's got a nice, solid, simple narrative. It's easy to follow, but it's enjoyable. You care about the characters. You want to see them succeed.
The voice actor of the villain in the second one, like the Taraga, his voice has just like got this cadence to it, which is just elevates it.
Oh, it's lovely. It has that kind of villainous charisma you're not expecting from a children's tie-in promotional cartoon.
He's almost Palpatine-like.
Yeah, no,
it kind of is, actually.
Yeah, he does have a very Palpatine-esque attitude to him as well. It's quite good to see.
And, yeah, even his role, yeah.
I also realised it was mostly produced by the United Kingdom Lego team, which is why most of the voice actors had quite thick UK accents with a few Americans thrown in.
Right. Yes.
Particularly Tol Vakama, the protagonist for the 2 and 3, who had a very thick English accent, very posh, very upper class.
He was a bit, yeah.
Which did fit in with his character, which was at the start kind of a bit wheedly, a bit cowardly, unsure of himself, blaming himself for the tragedies, which he did gradually grow as a character, then reverted, then grew again.
Yes. I did see a comment on one of the YouTube videos saying, when I was a kid, I found his insecurities annoying, but now I'm an adult and I understand where he's coming from.
It is the kind of character where you you feel more sympathetic towards him as you get older and realise that suddenly being thrust into a position you weren't prepared or trained for can be very daunting.
Yes. Something I noticed with the first one actually as well, in regards to the character designs, they're all that sort of hybrid, where they're slightly organic. But then you've gone and got like a cameo of the Borok, which everyone knows them as like the ball ones, the ones that roll up and they have the pecking head. They're basically like the toys, exactly.
Yeah, it's strange because
maybe because they were only like in one frame of the entire film.
I imagine they were just there to say, look, these things exist, you can buy them next season.
Interesting actually, that first one, because at that point the Toa Nuva, which were like the stars or the supporting characters of that first film, I don't think you could actually get them anymore when they came out. I mean, we're talking about a toy line that's like 20 years old now.
Exactly. It was the kind of thing where it might have just been a little nod for the long-time collectors, which is also a nice thing, and to say, remember, these things that were really popular, there's a movie about them now, and we're going to make new ones.
I also watched the first one, and they do kind of have like their own lore, their own lingo for things, most of it ripped from the Maori language, I discovered.
Yes, which is interesting.
Yes. And what I did while watching it is I sort of overthought it and thought, okay, well, this is an allusion to something in the real world. Like, hold your rahi, and rahi is a term for animal. Like, hold your horses would be the real thing. So it's like, hold your animals.
Yeah, so and they're clearly trying to go for that. But
we dedicate this lacrosse game to Atanui.
Yes, the great sacred sports game they play to respect their ancient ones and gods is Bionicle lacrosse.
It is.
Which is questionable.
Yeah. I had a friend in primary school, and he was a big Bionicle fan, and he was the son of the sports teacher, and he was passionate into sports, even more so than he was Bionicle. But he loved the Coley game, which was lacrosse, and he even convinced his dad, who, like I said, was a complete sports nut, and I think just revolutionised how to teach sports to kids. Got a lacrosse set and were essentially playing Coley in grade 5.
I will say, spoiler alert for the next 30 seconds if you want to skip it, but the way the main character beats the big bad guy at the end of the movie is in basically a lacrosse game. It is ridiculous, and I loved it.
It's like polo crossed with lacrosse. And that's one thing I noticed as well, is none of the characters actually really fight. Like, you've gone and got the guy who's got massive swords, but he never uses them to hit anyone or cut anyone. You're dealing with like monsters that are like not of this world. So like I think that's usually a thing with kids shows, is you can't show any violence where it's like a humanoid character, or you make them robots so you can shred them.
Exactly. You do see a bit more actual combat in the later movies, but in that first one it was very much, there was no real violence.
Yeah, wave your magic sword and plunge it into the earth and glowing lights come out.
Whoosh with wind beams and all that. Or just freeze them solid, but then they unfreeze to make sure you know they're okay. And
fire and air makes glass.
Which, not quite how this works.
No, if it was sand. Maybe.
I think the implication was he had sand in the wind, but even still, it was a bit silly.
Just a bit, yes.
But again, this was a children's tie-in promotional cartoon.
But that's the sort of stuff that gets kids in trouble, where they watch that and they go, oh, I learned a science fact, and they go tell the teacher, and the teacher's like, what the hell are you on about?
Exactly. No. Sand and fire can make glass if you superheat sand particles, but you're not going to... that also means the kids go and sell it to the teacher, and the teachers think, aha, now I can teach them how it actually works.
If you've got a good teacher.
Yeah, otherwise they go, yeah, sure, why not, kid?
Oh, dear. Yes, also, there's a moment where they play the lacrosse game, and all the blue Bionicles are all girls as well. Yes. There's no diversity in that one.
Look, I don't think they were going for diversity back when they made these movies. They were going very typical early to mid 2000s sensibilities.
But it was also like, "Oh, you play pretty good for a girl."
Which, even for the time,
It's like, dude,
come on, we're past that by now.
I didn't even cry when you died and then had your face ripped off by your friend.
Yeah, that was always because they all have masks. A mask is basically their face because under their face is the same thing.
Yeah.
It all looks exactly the same unless you're a Toa, but they all have the same basic head.
Yes.
So their masks are basically their face. But at one point, spoiler alert again, the main character's friend temporarily dies, leaving only his mask behind. So to honour him, they shove his mask in the front of his speed bike as he goes up to find the final enemy. And I'm sure it's meant to be an emotional thing, like he's always with you. But all I can think of is tearing my friend's head off and shoving on a spike in the front of my bike. And that's just horrifying.
As well, that was a toy back in the day, and he drives that bike for like 15 seconds and then crashes it.
That was the capitalistic beauty of these old tie-in things. They could make something looks cool for 5 seconds and market it, and it would sell.
$40 as well. That would have been.
It weren't cheap.
Although, looking back, I mean, of course, you got inflation and all that stuff. But these were $10 each.
And for what they are, that's actually not too bad.
No, not at all. I mean, these are... Some of them are nearly 30 centimetres tall.
And they all look quite cool.
They do.
They're simple, but they're very iconic. You can look at it and immediately think, yes, that is a cool thing that I own.
Yeah, it is.
And they do make great shelf pieces, I've got to say.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They all do follow the basic design. And then they have variants from then on.
And one thing they did as a kid that made you think was so cool was each Toa's mask had its own unique special ability.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you immediately think, that is so cool, what mask would I have? And therefore you think, that's the coolest power, that's what I'd have. And you would immediately go out and say, I want this Bionicle, Mum. Or Dad, depending on who has the wallet.
Yeah, I don't think Mum was too happy with me constantly asking for these things back in the day.
That showed that they knew what they were targeting towards. Because as a kid, it's like Power Rangers. Which Power Ranger would you be? Or if you're playing Pokemon, which Pokemon would you choose? If you make them unique and give them a unique, singular aspect to that one character, you're going to have kids who are going to immediately gravitate to that character.
They probably were the hit toy of the 2000s, eh?
I think so. They were very popular for good reason.
Because, I mean, like, previous decades, you had, like, G.I. Joe, you had Ninja Turtle. Well, that was just in the 80s. You had Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, so many other things.
The 90s was very much Power Rangers. That's when Power Rangers and shows like Power Rangers and Master Rider and all that, they were the massive ones.
And maybe Pokemon bled into, like, the 2000s?
Pokemon was very much 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's still going today. It's still incredibly popular, but that was when it first started being a massive cultural significance.
But that's even different from what Bionicle is.
Absolutely. Completely different type of series.
So, yeah, it is kind of its own thing, which is interesting.
Which I think is what made it so popular. It was just its own unique thing.
Yeah.
Because it had a kind of Power Rangers-y aspect. They're colour-coded, cool warriors, but they're also badass robots.
On the topic of the masks you mentioned, the masks of power, the second one is very much about these new Toa, these new warriors who were once just regular villagers, like everyone else, who get these powers and they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's my mask power? And some of them are really cool. Like one guy, the main guy, he's got stealth.
Another one can shapeshift.
Yeah.
One of them can communicate with beasts and have them help them. One guy's mask can light up.
Yes.
You do discover later that it can also help him see through walls, but when he first uses it, it just lights up the cave.
Yeah.
And one mask power, which was particularly terrifying in aspect, was his power was to dominate someone and make them do his bidding.
Yeah, mind control.
As a hero, not what you consider a heroic power at all.
And they could have explored that.
And the best thing is, he was probably one of the nicest of the Tower.
Yeah.
But his power was terrifying.
I've actually got him here in front of me.
You do indeed.
And again, watching these films, it's like there's so many characters you're trying to juggle.
I'm fairly certain he was Toa Wanua off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think he is. And so many characters, some just get overlooked.
Like, my favourite design-wise has always been the Ice Tower.
Yes.
And they always had the coolest look. They got cool white armour, a cool sword, cool, like, eyepiece that lets them see through things and all that. And they just always get looked over. That's a shame, because they always have my favourite design.
Yeah. And I mean, going into the third film as well, which is like it's a whole other thing.
Which is a sequel to the prequel.
Yes, and sees all the Toa get mutated into like half creatures.
Yeah, called the Hiderak or something like that.
Something like that. It's tricky, all these terms.
There's
all these
a lot
names.
of terms that get around.
But yeah, you kind of got these hordes of spider villains.
Yeah, which were quite cool design-wise.
And like they had ripcord,
Disc
spinning
spinners,
discs,
which were great for the toy line.
Yes, great for the toy line. The villains, which you were talking about before.
Yeah.
If you want to commit that to the radio show.
Look, I just want to... This is a... All I'm saying is that the two villains, Sidorak and
Rudaka,
thank you, for sentient evil robots were strangely attractive, and I will die on that hill.
They were designed, for the movies at least, to have curves in the right places. We'll say that much.
Yes, which is strange for robots, but there
very
you go.
Strange. Yeah.
Like, there was no distinct. It was obviously not meant to be attractive. It is just.
I think it's just, the plague, the plight of designing characters, and when you got like a femme fatale character, it's just like, make her sexy, but she's a robot, make her sexy.
How? Figure it out. That's what I pay you for.
She.
It was mostly the mannerisms that sold her, though. She was a fun villain.
Yes. Very reminiscent of character in Star Wars. Funnily enough, the writer of the first and second film, Henry Gilroy, actually went on to do Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
So, which was my big passion after Bionicle landed.
She had a very much Mystique from the original X-Men series attitude to her.
Yeah.
Very ruthless, her goal is all that matters, and she will burn the world down to achieve it.
And I remember she comes in on a giant golden spider at the end.
She was cool. She was a cool villain. Again,
another toy you could buy, which I had, which was actually a play set.
Tragically, I did not, and I wish if I could find it on eBay, it's gone in my house.
Yeah, that was... It is a weird thing to look back on.
It is.
But I don't think it's any more weird than any other toy line.
Oh, no, there are a lot of strange toy lines back in the day. But basically, Bionicle was just Lego wanted to make something to target to the slightly older children who were looking for something a bit cooler and more edgy than just little yellow man with a police helmet. And it succeeded.
Yeah, it did.
There was a very well-loved series back in the day, and a lot of kids at my school collected them. I collected them religiously. So, kudos to Lego. I just wish they were less evil about selling things and charging several $100s for a Lego set.
Yeah. Well, I think Lego is, reasonably priced for what a lot of stuff is. I mean, you go to some stores and they're all... I don't know if I should mention names, but there's one store that has the best sales and currently has an amazing sale on. I went to them out of desperation because the other store, which was selling it for $160, didn't have it. So I went to this other store that sold it for $200. So I bought it. And as soon as I got it the day afterwards, went on sale, $150.
That's how it always goes, isn't it?
It is. But when you consider what it is, I spent like nearly 4 hours building that thing.
True, and you are paying for the time.
Yeah, and the engineering that goes into those things as well. I mean, there's another set I have. It's the Slave One, which is Boba Fett's ship. And it's kind of got like the triggers for the lasers on the back, but they're like right up the top. And there's little triggers, and they trigger the firing mechanism, which is down the bottom. And I just built it. I just followed the instructions. I didn't pay too much attention to how it went together, but it worked.
Yeah.
And the fact that it worked and I didn't know what I was doing.
It does help. It is very accessible, which I like, if you do that kind of thing. And I can't judge. I buy statues and action figures for things I like, and I've spent more money than I care to admit on it.
Yeah. It's
But we all have our things we like, our little passions, our little hobbies, and Bionicle for me as a kid was one of them. I didn't pay for when I was a kid. Obviously, that was my parents. Thank you, Mum and Dad. But that is just something a lot of people, we like to collect things. It's just human nature. We look at the shiny things or look at the cool things. I want all of them in my house on my shelf.
Yes, definitely.
Well, back when I was into Yu-Gi-Oh! I want all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. I gave up on that years ago because, my God, it's gotten impossible to keep track of.
No, that
Still
was...
brilliant, but...
That's one thing as well that was sort of... It felt flash in the pan from the outside looking in. But if you're in that, it's still going to this day, isn't it?
I will say, if you like good voice acting, don't watch Yu-Gi-Oh! I adore the voice acting, but it is genuinely atrocious. But that's what I love about it. It's corny, it's over the top, it's ridiculous. It's got 3 different voice actors for everybody. I love it. But that's a chat for another episode.
Yes. Oh, God. I never was into anime, but that would be an interesting topic, I guess, in the future.
The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series actually had about 200 episodes, I think it was. And it was completely ridiculous and balls to the wall crazy, and it was brilliant.
Dragon Ball was also the big thing.
Oh, I was massively into Dragon Ball back in the day.
Yeah.
Actually.
I mean, that was going for years before I was even aware of it. But then Super Saiyan was like what I knew.
Oh, that was iconic. That was a great moment to see.
And then I look into it and it's like first introduced in issue or episode 900 and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, there was Dragon Ball, which was the original anime as Goku was a child growing up.
Yeah.
Then there was Dragon Ball Z. Or Z if you want to get technical about things.
It was... That's a whole other topic.
That's a very big other topic we could talk about.
Anything else?
I think that about covers us for Bionicle for today.
Yeah, we spent too much time before we started recording talking about it. Yeah, it is interesting to look back at it. And once these films sort of ended, I mean, they could have continued to do these for years afterwards.
I will say this, in Bionicle 4, despite the fact the story was very predictable and slightly weak because it was meant to be setting up the next trilogy,
which never happened.
the voice work was brilliant.
Yes.
The main character was voiced by Michael Dorn. To those who don't know, Michael Dorn is Worf from Star Trek, The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Brilliant character.
Yes.
And his right hand was voiced by Jim Cummings, well known as Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, and about 1,000, I'm not even kidding about that, other roles.
Yeah. I best know him from Star Wars The Clone Wars as Hondo Anaka. And if you do anything Star Wars now, he's probably there.
Jim Cummings is one of the most iconic, well-known and well-loved voice actors out there from the Western world, and he is just in everything. And it's always a pleasure to hear him.
Definitely.
I remember my wife and I were playing Fallout 4 a while back, and a random NPC come up, and we thought, wow, that NPC has weirdly good voice acting. It was Jim. It's always Jim.
Following those films, though, Bionicle did take a bit of an edgier turn. I remember going into 2006, it was like these spine-backed monsters who were claiming to be the great warriors Toa, but they're actually the villains, and then the Toa show up, and they're in an emo scene with emo music playing in their rain, and they're shooting guns.
It was a strange turn.
It was edgy, and then
they tried a bit too hard to get that edge, and it came across as a bit too forced and contrived, I saw.
Yeah. This ain't your granddad's Bionicle. I'm 10. What are you talking about?
So please, I just want the cool robot men to go wee wee with the flashing swords and the cool lights. Why are they angry?
Did have the flashing swords, yeah.
Which was cool.
It was the underwater one, which there's one I do have but couldn't find, and he glowed in the dark. And he was like this creepy, spiny dude who just would reside in the darkest depths of the ocean, and he glowed in the dark, and it was cool.
Very cool, but for someone like me who's terrified of the ocean, that guy was just too hectic, man.
And the octopus guy, who was twisting tentacles.
Yeah, which for a robot's even weirder.
Anyway.
Bionicle was both brilliant and weird. We'll go with that.
A good note to end on, because that's the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening. We're going to be back next week with a look back at the X-Men movies.
Yes, indeed. Looking forward to it.
We'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Bye for now.